Hi everyone, good Wednesday afternoon. Welcome to GoLocal Live. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for tuning in with us. We have a couple of health shows for you this afternoon here. We're going to start with Kathleen DiChiara with End Chronic Disease, the Healing Power of Belief, Behaviors, and Bacteria, your new book. Kathleen, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's hold this up here.
All right.
End Chronic Disease, the Healing Power of Beliefs, Behaviors, and Bacteria. There's so much to the story, and it really starts with your story.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about this book.
Yeah, so this book actually came shortly after, well, it actually is a culmination of our story and what happened after we really discovered that our food was having a huge impact on chronic disease in our own family. And several years ago, we had done a documentary called Secret Ingredients. It was in the Rhode Island Film Festival. We won the Green Planet Award, which is a very prestigious award here in Rhode Island. And that was really about changing our food, shifting away from processed food and moving to an organic diet. And we reversed 21 chronic diseases in our family of 5. And that was huge for us because ultimately what we were doing was breaking a vicious cycle in our own family with our 3 boys, and teaching them that we didn't have to be on that trajectory of chronic disease. I think to understand the scope of it, 4 out of 10 Americans right now have chronic disease, and or 6 out of 10 actually, and then 4 out of 10 have multiple chronic disease. And this isn't just a US problem, it's really global. I mean, globally, 95% of the world is suffering with chronic illness. And then if it's not just your lifespan, people who have chronic illness, which of course is both preventable and reversible, they also lose a big chunk of their life, so 1/3 of their living years due to disability or loss of life, just not engaged in their life actively. And I think ultimately that's where this book came from. I shifted to writing this book because what I found in my practice in nutrition is that people were kind of caught up in that vicious loop of not knowing what it was that was keeping them in that chronic disease cycle. And so much of the power they already own. So I really wanted to talk about what are those lifestyle practices, what's the mindset that drives the behavior that ultimately ends up shifting the ecosystem of the body. And so that's where those 3 principles come from, the beliefs, behaviors, and bacteria.
As you said, the documentary, now the book, it's you've gone through sort of the trial and error and seeing what works. I mean, you basically have a wealth of information that you can share with individuals. What do you hear from people when they say, okay, let's talk, Kathleen, how is food going to help me address this chronic disease? Let's just start there in terms of, a big diet overhaul might seem daunting to people, but from personal experience, if you want to feel better, people who will do anything to feel better. How do you start that first step in the process to say, okay, let's take a look and step by step, kind of here's the recommendations to, again, get away from the processed foods and deal with what's going to address your chronic illness at that root level?
Great, it's a great question. And I think oftentimes what happens is people get caught up in dietary theories and they sort of chase what is the right diet for me, as opposed to looking at the quality of the nutrition. And that's the place to start. In other words, they lose sight of the fact that no matter what dietary theory or what dietary plan you think would work for you, if you're focusing on the quality of the food, ultimately you're going to head in the right direction. That is the number one place to start, is food nutrition, looking at the quality, getting away from ultra-processed food. The science shows us that when people focus on putting food quality into the diet, they actually get better. It is the ultra-processed food. It is the monocrops like the corn, the soy, the processed grains that are going into the food system that people are ultimately suffering from. That's what's creating the chronic disease. That's what's driving inflammation. So real food that has high nutrient value is the answer for everybody. And if people could just step back and simplify their life, that's the ultimate place to start.
And you've heard that theory, like shop on the outsides of the supermarket,
right,
not in the aisles, not with the packages of food that might withstand an apocalypse, if you will.
Yeah, that's right.
But let's talk a little bit about the role bacteria plays.
Right, so another thing that people have probably heard now is that the microbiome is a huge driver, right? We've heard a lot about probiotics. A lot of people are implementing probiotics into their lifestyle. And what I'm really asking people to, or inviting people to consider, is that our bacteria, in this case, are really a marker of good health, not a maker of good health. So we have that desire to drive the microbiome in our direction. But ultimately, if your lifestyle habits are what they should be, and you're consistently sleeping well, moving well, eating good food, and doing all of the things, that the habits that we all know to be true, right, what grandma told us to do, then the microbiome will reflect that. So it will show us that the microbes that are supposed to be there will be there. And that is the ultimate. Certainly you can take specific types of microbes to clinically drive something out, like maybe a sinus infection or things like that. But for overall health and the removal of chronic disease, what we really want to do is shift how we view health, move our behaviors in our direction consistently on a daily basis, and then our microbiome will then reflect that. So it doesn't work the other way around. So that's what we really want people to think about.
They call what? The gut the second brain.
That's right.
It might in fact be the first brain.
Yeah, I think so.
It really does drive
right.
everything. So where did the beliefs come into this book of ending chronic disease?
Yeah, so the belief is really laying the foundation, because again, if the body won't go where the mind won't let it. So you have to really have that understanding of, what is my understanding of what is health? So one of the things that I talk about in the book is setting your values, living in congruence. Oftentimes, if you have a sick family member, somebody has chronic disease, there's that tendency that that person needs to be on a specific diet. We know people that have celiac, they might have to have a specialized diet. And what I'm essentially saying is, if people in a household are doing individual things for themselves and there's not congruence in the same family, it's very difficult for everybody to actually live a healthy lifestyle. So if people are living by the same values, if they understand what does health mean for us, then in essence it's really driving a stronger ecosystem in the house, that everyone is really supporting each other and they understand what the goal is in terms of your health values. So that's what the beginning of the book is really driving some of those, the values, the wisdom, tapping into our own intuition, understanding that food is information. So, we're really laying that foundation, and then there's 6 principles at the beginning of the book, and then that lays that foundation for the behaviors that follow.
Now, in the course of writing this book, again, you've been through the documentary, did you have any surprises yourself or any revelations? Writing a book is such a personal process. Take us through were there any sort of wow moments?
Yeah, I think that we always want to find this secret weapon, right? Everyone wants to know what is the one thing, and I get asked every day. People send me messages all the time. What was the one thing? What was your healing path? How did you do it?
It's a journey.
It is, yeah. Or even they want to know, what was the journey? What was your journey? People want to replicate what you did, right? Because it's tried and true. Or they see something that I did with my son. What did you do with him? Or what did you do to unravel that particular condition? And what I'm reminded of, and even with people that I've also seen with great success, to reverse their own conditions, is that it is the discovery of their own journey. It is their own self-discovery. And there is no magic bullet. Of course, we all know that to be true. But we still ask, we still want to know, we still want to do what other people are doing. Even the people that were successful, we still want to replicate what they did, even if we know that what they did is likely not going to work for us. It's very, very tempting to say, well, she was so successful at that and she had such great outcomes, I still think I should do what she did, even when we know deep down that I've done that before and it was not actually effective for me. So I think the revelation for me was, it just really reinforced what I know to be true, which is that it doesn't matter how shiny the object or the next quick fix or the next health magic comes every year, is that it is these principles, these driving principles that we know to be true. If we master them, if we truly master them, they actually are the most effective. They seem simple, they're very, very difficult to implement. For example, when I talk about sleep in the book, and I talk about the importance of sleep and how effective it is for cleaning the brain, clearing the brain, we know the lymphatic system is in the brain and that's what cleans the brain at night. Most people would say, well, I sleep enough or I get 8 hours of sleep, but they're often forcing sleep by taking sleeping pills or melatonin or taking synthetic things to override their own circadian rhythm. So that's not, of course, proper sleep. And so we're not really getting the full effect of sleep because we're overriding our natural process and forcing the body into a sleep pattern that it's not happening on its own. So when I say something like master the art of sleep, what I'm really saying is, can you get your body to naturally engage in the sleeping process on its own? And if you can, then you're really ultimately getting the healing benefits from that. And these are hard things for people to do, but once they do them, the benefit is huge. It's absolutely huge. And so that's what I would encourage people to do. And they have more power than they think and more control over the outcomes than they think. So I think it's worth people really engaging in.
And the power of movement.
Oh, the power of movement is important, because one thing that we don't realize with movement is that we have become sedentary, of course, with technology has allowed us so many modern conveniences. And then what we often do is we're sedentary during the day, and then we try to offset that by moving at the end of the day, getting in some exercise, or we might do some exercise on the weekend. And what we know now is that's worse, to be sedentary and then have that movement to try to offset it, that 8 hours of stagnation. And so the recommendation now is to move frequently. We don't have to go and work out and spend hours on a treadmill or hours in a gym, but to really do small, frequent movements out throughout the day. And this is really how the body was built. We used to harvest our own food. We used to have to forage. We were, moving around a lot more frequently. And again, these are things that the body needs. The lymphatic system needs to be moving all the time. We need blood flow. So the recommendation really for people who are struggling with chronic illness is not that they have to set aside another big chunk of time to undo something or to lose weight or to move their body in a way that is something that they feel they can't add to their schedule, but to really just incorporate that movement throughout the day in small chunks, and they get an enormous benefit. So again, the science supports that message, but it's also very encouraging for people because, of course, if you're not feeling well, it can be overwhelming and daunting to think, I'm not prepared to do a lot of movement or exercise, or I can't incorporate that back into my life. But you don't need to add a lot of extra time to do that. So just encouraging people.
Keep moving.
Just keep on moving. And it's true for all of us, really. I think that that's a really beautiful thing. And the nice thing, too, about the book is that I'm also talking about other ways to connect with nature and to connect with our environment. And we can really bundle some of those activities together because movement can be outside, connecting with each other, connecting with the community. So talking with somebody, meeting a friend, going for a walk and reconnecting that way as opposed to texting or things like that. So remembering the importance of community.
Now, this book, again, I want to put it up so folks can see it here because, again, it's all about branding. Kind of just came out a couple weeks ago now?
Yeah, February 18th.
Okay,
Yes.
So talk with us. You're on the circuit, you're out there and talking. I mean, what are you hearing from people? I'm sure not a lot, again, probably some have read so far, and you may have some reaction, but some say, oh, this looks great. What are you hearing from folks when they say, well, why should I get this book?
Yeah. Well, actually, I have a book club going right now. So we have a live virtual book club that we meet every day. So I go live every morning at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, which really just allows the reader to spend time with me every single day and dig into the practical application of it. So that's been super fun, and the people in the group love it because everybody wants an opportunity, of course, to ask questions of an author and to dig in and to learn a little bit more than maybe what's in the book and kind of take it to that next level. What I always find is people buy a book sometimes, they might flip through, read a little bit of it, put it on a nightstand. I really want people to apply it in their own life. What does it mean for you? What does it mean for your own family? If you are struggling, what's the practical application of that in your own life? So that was really my offering to the community, was to say, listen, if it helps you to engage on a daily basis for 10, 15 minutes and have somebody say, here are some additional tips, this is another way for you to think about it, then that's my offering and my gift. So there are 31 principles in the book. So for the 31 days of March, that's what I'm doing, just making that offering. So on my website, people can just enroll in that. It's completely free. And that's a nice way, and people are loving that because it's a nice feedback.
It's a bonus. It's an added bonus. You get the book and a book club
That's right.
a daily interaction with the author.
Right.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and they can benefit from other people's questions, so people can submit questions before if they're shy and they don't want to ask questions in the live. Of course, nobody's being seen. I'm the only one on camera. But it's a nice way, and they can benefit when someone else asks a question and they, think, oh, I didn't even think of that. So that's a nice way for them to hear. And then at the end of each week, I send out a little discussion guide of all the tips that I discussed during that week, and that goes out to the group by email with a little highlight of things to consider. And so yeah, it's a nice little added bonus.
But certainly keeping you busy as well.
Oh yeah.
Really there for your readers.
Yes.
So then what's next? You
Yeah.
have the movie, you have the documentary, you have the book, you have your practice.
Yes.
What does 2020 look like for Kathleen?
Yeah, so I'm doing a lot of speaking. I'll be traveling. I always do anyway, so there are several events that I speak at. And in Rhode Island, I'll be doing some, I'll be at Barnes & Noble in Smithfield, I think on May 16th, so that'll be a nice thing for people to come if they want to go to a local bookstore. And then I will also do some Facebook Lives with other large organizations, and I'll be at different conferences in the fall, in the spring and the fall, and I'll be in Chicago in May. So we'll be doing some travel and some virtual meetings and a lot of podcasts. And we just invite people to engage and to talk about it. The whole idea about the book was really to keep it simple. What I have found over the last really the last 5 years, 5 to 7 years, was that people feel overwhelmed. There's so many different books about health, there's so many different books about healing, and people are overwhelmed. They don't know where to begin. They get started, they jump on, they start doing something, and before you know it, they're on to the next thing, and they're all over the place, or they're trying different things, and they feel that it's information overload, to be perfectly honest with you, Kate. And I think that we just have to pull back the curtain a little bit, really simplify the process, take it from somebody who's been there as a parent, a patient, and a practitioner. I look through the lens of all of those views, and I can really be compassionate to people who have suffered, but also to say, listen, these are the things that are tried and true and have worked. And if you really want to see change in yourself, you absolutely can do it. This is a huge opportunity for you to take back your power, to embrace. And I have found that people who are working with integrative practitioners, working with their own medical teams, they love nothing better than a patient who's advocating for themselves, who's taking action in their own life. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Well, very good. Again, end chronic disease, the healing power of beliefs, behaviors, and bacteria. Local bookstores, Amazon, where can we find this?
Everywhere books are available.
Okay.
And if your local bookstore doesn't have it, tell them to carry it.
Okay, very good. Well, I appreciate your taking the time to come in again.
Thank you so much for
Very
having
important
me.
here, dealing with health and on a very personal level. And again, you've got that personal story. So, Kathleen DiChiara, I appreciate your coming on.
Thanks for having me, Kate.
And we appreciate you watching here on GoLocal Live. We'll be back again at 4 o'clock with the Warren Alpert Medical School at Brown University. It is Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. We'll have an expert in to talk about the latest. So thanks for watching us at the 3 o'clock segment. We look forward to seeing you soon. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.